Hey everybody, welcome to another video. This one's going to be a little different than the videos I've done before because it's a preview video. I've done some of these in the past, but it's been a while, so we'll do another one. There's a big, huge update on the test server. There's 7 new scrolls per resource, so we've got 7 new order, new growth, new energy, new decay scrolls. They're awesome. Let's check them out. Okay, first up for order, we have Gallant Defender. Gallant Defender costs 4. It's got 2 attack, 2 countdown, 4 health, and it has the ability while you have less units on the field than your opponent, Gallant Defender has 2 armor. So the thing about Gallant Defender that I don't know that I like the most is the requirement that you have to have fewer creatures on the board. Stat-wise, it's mediocre. Importantly, it's not a soldier, so it doesn't key off of like Wings Captain. But really what we're looking at here is just a basic creature that you find yourself in this position where you're trying to put more stuff on the board, or you're trying to remove your opponent's units, and you'll lose the ability at inopportune times, or you'll put yourself in a position where you don't get the value out of it. So essentially you're paying 4 for a 2/2/4, and really I think if I'm paying 4, I'm getting Wings Captain, I'm getting maybe Spiky Guy, or now the new Night Scholar. So really, I think I pass on Gallant Defender, but I think it's an interesting scroll nonetheless. Next up is Infiltrate. Infiltrate's a spell that costs 3 order. It says target unit's countdown is increased by 2, and then you get to draw a scroll. I really like the utility of this scroll. I've seen it a couple times get value for me in a deck that the ability itself is fine. It keeps somebody off of attacking for the next couple turns, and then on top of that, it replaces itself. So the effect itself not worth a scroll, but because it's a cantrip, I think there's probably other things you play, but I could see it in a deck that likes to draw a bunch. It could be something like the Resurgence of a Drago deck, or it could be just a straight tempo order deck that's trying to play just the tempo game. So I like it. I'm a fan, and I think it may see play. All right, now we're looking at Pilgrims Feet. Pilgrims Feet is an enchantment that's going to give the enchanted creature the ability that whenever it moves, it gets healed by 2. Now, it doesn't seem that impressive, and I don't know if it makes the cut, but the place I see the most value for this is against Decay, which is obviously pretty prominent at this point. But anything that's going to give poison, or that does that incremental damage, like Brain Lice, we're looking at Blightbearer, all the other like poison or just little damage effects. I can see value in running Pilgrim's Feet to sort of counteract that, but it seems situationally good. There are definitely times where you want it, but I don't know if it makes the cut. I like the flavor of it. I like where it's at. I think it's costed fine. I just for my money, I'm doing other things with my resources. Moving on, let's take a look at Righteous Partisan. He's a creature that costs 4. He's a human, again human but not soldier. He has 2 attack, 2 countdown, and 2 health. But he has the ability that while you have less units on your field than your opponent, he gets +4 attack. So Righteous Partisan then becomes a 6/2/2. He's fragile with 2 health, and I think he suffers the same thing that Gallant Defender does with the issue relating to you are trying to play out creatures, but you can't really swarm the board that well if the number of creatures impairs or impacts the abilities of your guys. Again, for 4, 6 attack seems good, but I think the number of times you'll get it where you want to have it, I just don't see myself playing it. I could be totally wrong on this guy though, because 6 attack, but it seems like you're then just trying to put yourself in a position where you're behind to get value, and I think you just want to, most order decks I think just want to come out with bodies and keep stuff alive and do the tempo game, and then sort of win just through attrition that way. Soldier Bond is another enchantment from order. It's going to cost 2, and it's going to give a creature the ability that says whenever enchanted unit takes damage, all units behind it count down by 1. So this isn't just creatures, this is units as well. What I think I like about Soldier's Bond is the ability to abuse it with, say, Kabonk. Being able to draw a scroll and then also deal the point that reduces your opponent or reduces your creature's countdown by 0. I think that's good. I think that's a thing you want to do. But again, it's just an issue of situationally good and whether or not we're going to see it make the cut for high-level competitive play. Let's go ahead and look at Warding Stone now. It's a 3-order structure. It has no attack, no countdown, and 4 health. And it says when Warding Stone is destroyed in combat, opponent's unit is then returned to his owner's hand, and then you get to draw a scroll. So it's going to replace itself, and it's kind of like a pushback, but it seems really situational. It is another structure, though, so if you're trying to do some hybrid energy structure tricks, might be worth that. In my book, I feel like paying 3 to maybe get a pushback and maybe just have it die to some other form of damage. I can see where it would be good against Decay because Decay has a harder time with the structures, but I don't think it's going to make the cut for me again. So far it's not looking amazing for what we're seeing for Order, but I like the scrolls. I like the flavor of them. I think they're good, and I'm really excited about all the other scrolls though. So let's go ahead and dig into those. Our last Order scroll is going to be Wing Spear. He's a 3-cost human creature. Again, not a soldier. More surprising this time because the whole Wings series of creatures was in fact all soldiers, and then the Wings captain itself is a soldier. I would have thought of all the creatures that this would be a soldier. Now it has the ability of Spiky 2. So right off the bat, it's just a 3-cost spiky guy, which is good against, say, growth. It's probably fine against decay. But then it also has the added ability of this thing called Dominion, which is when your opponent is down and idle, then the spiky is increased by 2. So anytime during the game when your opponent's idle has been destroyed, then this thing has spiky 4. I like this. I think this is neat. I think it's a fine costed unit. Dominion's an interesting ability. We'll see more of it in some other stuff, but probably it'll be pretty fragile because of the stats, the 2 attack, 2 countdown, 2 health being the big fragile thing. But it'll be something that your opponent will have a hard time attacking into later in the game. And that's sort of how Dominion is structured. So it kind of feels 2 ways. There's 2 ways you can take it. One is Dominion is like a snowball mechanic where if you're already ahead in a game, then it gives you an extra boost. But one of the other ideas, though, is that Dominion is just a delayed mechanic. So at some point in the game, you're going to have taken out an idol, and so the Wing Spear is fine in the early game, but then gets better in the late game, which is what you want because it's this sort of timing thing where a good thing in the early game isn't maybe great in the late game, but because this Dominion ability, that sort of changes. So that's all our Order scrolls we're looking at. Let's go ahead and move on to energy. Okay, first up for energy, we have Boom Reaver. Boom Reaver is a 3-cost energy dude. He's a human. He has 3 attack, 2 countdown, and 3 health. And then he has ranged attack as well. We're going to obviously go ahead and compare this guy to Scattergunner right off the bat, just because stat-wise he's pretty similar, except for he's got an extra point of health and 1 less point of attack. So we just sort of swapped those. I think he's totally fair. I like him. I like what he means for ranged attack decks. We're getting this sort of critical mass of creatures to the point where you can't just say to yourself, I'm going to make a ranged attack deck, let me just put all the ranged attack energy creatures in and then go from there. You have to make real sacrifices and real choices between more or less ostensibly all playable scrolls, and so that puts us into this position of having interesting design choices to make. And so I like that Boom Reaver exists, even though he feels very similar to Scattergunner. I think he will fill a very close role, and maybe we'll see him together, both of them side by side, delivering the beats. Next up is Echomaton. I'm calling him Echomaton. I don't know if that's right. He costs 4. He's an automaton. The art is amazing on the card. Let me tell you, that placeholder art, woo! fancy. He's got 1 attack, 2 countdown, 3 health, and then when an opponent plays a spell, you increase its attack by 2, and then when Echomaton is destroyed, if the attack of Echomaton is 2 or more, increase your energy by 1. So he's going to come out on the board. It's going to disincentivize your opponent from playing spells unless they can just destroy him. But I think even if they play a spell to try and destroy him, I think he gets buffed anyway. We'll test that, and we'll put the footage right here, and we'll say, oh, that's what happens. Okay. For my money, I think he's neat. I think the Automaton deck is coming together. I'd be curious to see what people make of him. I do like that he's going to increase your energy, though. So you could go from 4 to maybe 6 real quick, because I don't know, 4, 5, 6, because putting out a couple of these or something. I like him. I think he's neat, and I like that we're getting more automatons, because I want to see an automaton deck, a real deal automaton deck, come through and crush. That'd be sweet. Next up, we have Electrify. Electrify does something really cool. It costs 2 energy. It's a spell, and it says each structure you control makes a ranged attack dealing 1 damage. Now, what this really means is structure decks could potentially, not saying it's going to be viable, but there's the possibility that structure decks will have a better chance of just winning off of straight structures. Because right now there's not a structure other than Metal Wonder that just attacks your opponent's idol. So there, you could supercharge, or you could do some shenanigans maybe with, I think supercharge was really the only way you could do it. But Electrify is giving us the possibility or the ability to make our structures not only deal damage to idols, but then also deal damage to creatures in a really small package of 2 energy for this one spell. I think the structure decks will like it. I think they've getting value out of that machination. I'm thinking this will see play for sure. Okay, let's look at Hired Smuggler now. Hired Smuggler is going to cost you 2. Is a human. Stats are pretty basic. It's 2/2/2, so attack, countdown, health. It has ranged attack, which is nice. So we got that ranged attack deck all under wraps here. It's going to be awesome. But it has the ability Pillage. Now, Pillage is a new ability. What it does is anytime the creature with Pillage deals damage to an idol, you get to use whatever the Pillage effect is. And in this case, it's draw a structure. So we saw Electrify just now have essentially value for what will potentially be an awesome structure deck. Hired Smuggler is going to just be amazing in structure decks, I think. If it gets to attack, it will be amazing. That is the problem, though, is that it has 2 health, and it's going to die to a lot of removal. I think you still play it, though, because if you get 1 hit with it, you just get so much value out of it. I like it better than Sisters of the Fox. I like it better than, say, Visara Sage. Visara Sage was the decay creature that whenever it destroys the creature, you get to draw a card. I think I like Pillage as an ability better than that, and so I'm thinking we're going to see Hired Smuggler get play. The little art, the animation for it's cool. She's like pitching that bomb in the air. I dig it. I am a fan, and that's all you need to know. Speaking of being a fan, I am a huge fan of Power Trip. I think we're seeing maybe a little bit of an overpowered scroll. Power Trip's a spell. It's going to double your current energy, and if your energy is then 8 or more, you get to draw a scroll. So you're sitting on 6 energy, you cast this, you get up to 8 energy, you draw a scroll. And then you have 8 energy to spend. How great is that? You can drop a couple things. Let's say this. Let's say you have 2 Power Trips in your hand on turn 6. Turn 6, 2 Power Trips. Play the first one. You go down to, you go from 6 down to 4 up to 8. You go from 8 on the second one. You go from 8 down to 6 to 12. You've officially drawn 2 scrolls off Power Trip. You were looking at turn 6, 12 resources. You drop double Cannon Automaton. You drop Cannon Automaton plus Thunder Surge. You put down a Iron Ogre and you give him a Iron Whip, or I mean, there's just you activate a Solemn Giant. You play and activate a Solemn Giant all in the same turn. That's crazy. It's great. I love it. I think Power Trip is so good. I think what I'm scared of is when I try and think about where Power Trip should go, like what kind of place it has in decks. I can't think of a situation where you don't run Power Trip. Does that make sense? So if you're a mono energy deck, when do you not play Power Trip? I really think if you can't think of a situation, and there may be some corner cases where you're not getting past 4 resources, but really, Power Trip seems like it has a place in every deck. It accelerates you, and it replaces itself. It's a win-win, and I'm thinking we'll probably see it either go up to maybe 3 cost, or have the if you have maybe 10 energy or more. It may be fine though. It may be completely fair, and it may be exactly what energy needs to just get the edge over everything else and start crushing face. So Power Trip for the win. So we've seen one new Automaton. We've got another one. It's Replicaton. Now it costs 3, has 3 attack, 2 health, and 2 countdown. He's a little fragile again with this 2 health thing, but he has ranged attack, which is nice, and so he could fit into a ranged attack. And he has this survivability thing. So when Replicaton is destroyed, you get to return it to your hand if your current energy is 3 or more. And this is that current energy. The same thing we saw in Power Trip. The word current energy is the resources you have at that moment, not the ones you have available to you at, say, the start of every turn, but what you have in your pool. So if you pass the turn with 3 resources left over and Replicaton dies, he's coming back to your hand. I think it's neat. I think the ability is unique. What it does is it essentially disincentivizes you from spending all of your resources. Now there's another guy that does that too, which we'll talk about here in a minute, but I think the payoff from this guy seems like, unless you're finding a way to manipulate it by having a sack outlet every turn, or a way to maybe cast nutrition to then get it back, or something silly. I think the ability is less important, and it's just essentially an automaton that has similar stats. That's just a point off from being the same stats as a scattergunner. So automaton deck, go. So speaking of not wanting to spend your resources, let's look at Tempest Runner. Tempest Runner's cost 4. He's a human. He has no attack, 2 countdown, and 4 health. He's got ranged attack and armor 1, which are both awesome to have. And then he has the ability that says Tempest Runner's attack is equal to your current energy resource. So again, whatever resources you have left over or unspent are going to go and count towards his attack. Now they don't get used or anything, but that's the point, is you can't use them if you want him to attack for big. And he has the ability to attack for big after turn 6 or 7, or on turn 6 or 7. If you're playing a Power Trip, you're gonna have a huge Tempest Runner. The problem though is that he's huge and you can't do anything on your turn. So if your hand is empty, you're fine. But if you've got a Solemn Giant in play or an Automaton Forge, you have to make those hard choices of whether you pump your giant and have your giant attack instead, or do you have the Tempest Runner swing for lethal damage on his turn. I like what Tempest Runner does for the game, or for energy players, in that it makes them make harder choices. If you're running Tempest Runner, you have to decide on your turn, do I value a big hit now, or do I just want to do a little hit and get a little more stuff out, or can I wait till next turn to play these things? It puts really, really interesting decision points in the game for energy players, and I'm really excited to see what he does for the energy decks, especially the ranged attack energy deck, which is going to be awesome, by the way. All this new range stuff is great. It is going to be a powerhouse deck. I feel it in my bones. I love the ranged attack deck that is shaping up now with all these great new ranged units. Let's dig into the growth scrolls now. We've got, first up, Culling the Flock. Culling the Flock's cost 2. It's a spell. It says sacrifice target beast. All the other beasts you control have their attack increased by that unit's attack until the end of turn and become fully healed. Now, what I like about Culling the Flock is everything. I'm going to say everything. It's a cool scroll thematically. My one gripe about it is the name, Culling the Flock. I think culling the herd makes sense. I think culling the pack, especially since it's like a wolf pack, but a flock sounds like a flock of sheep or flock of seagulls, and that doesn't sound cool. The art doesn't look like a flock. It's a pack. It's a wolf pack. It's a herd. Herd is a little less, but that's an actual term, culling the herd. Anyway, the ability itself, though, you're getting rid of one of your beasts to then give all of your beasts an attack equal to the attack of that beast. It's powerful. It's powerful by itself, but then on top of that, all of them also become fully healed. That's great when you look at what beasts we're talking about. We're looking at Rot Eater. We're looking at all the wolves. We're looking at the new decay beast. We're talking rats, rat pack. I'm seeing Culling the Flock in concert with. Now we're quick to compare this with Crimson Bowl because it costs 2 and it does a buff. But when you play Crimson Bowl and then Cull the Flock on the one of your creatures, let's say you're attacking with 3 creatures, or you have a beast that isn't attacking, you cast Crimson Bowl and then you Cull the Flock on your non-attacking creature, you're giving at least +3, if not 4 or 5 to the remaining creatures, and that's a ton of damage. And you get the utility of the heal. So I like Culling the Flock. I think there'll be interesting decks built to manipulate or exploit Culling the Flock. Next up, we have Seed of Insurgency. It's a 6 growth enchantment. It says when enchanted creature is destroyed, it's summoned again on the same tile. Its countdown is then set to 1. For 6, you're putting this on a big guy. There's no way you're not putting this on a big old beefy guy that you're going to get value out of. You're putting it on a Sisters of the Owl. You're putting it on a Kinfolk Jarl. You're putting it on a Great Wolf. I think that Seed of Insurgency will maybe have a place in some interesting decks in the near future. Striped Fangbear. I like this guy. He's going to cost you 4. He's a beast, which is nice because we've got this new fancy beast card. He has 1 attack, which isn't great, 2 countdown, which is fine, and 5 health, which is admirable. The interesting thing, though, is if an opponent controls any humans at all, Striped Fangbear is relentless and has an attack increased by 3. So that means we're looking at a 4-2-5. Now, you might be curious how many humans are in the game. Let me show you. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Let's go type human. Look at all these humans. Look at all these humans. You see these humans across the board a lot. You see Blightbearer. You see, well, you don't see that yet. You see Berserker or Breaker all the time. You see the Skirmisher. You see the Spearman. You see Brother of the Wolf. You see Cursemonger. You see all these guys across the board all the time. So the chances of Striped Fangbear getting the buff are pretty good, which means for 4 you're getting a 4-2-5. And comparably, let's look at other 4s. Wings Captain stat-wise, a 4-2-4 with a good ability. Sisters of the Bear, so in the same color, let's say a 4-2-4 without Relentless. That's not a beast. I think the value is there with Striped Fangbear, and I think it's going to see play. That's just my opinion on the subject, but I'm going to put him in my growth deck when I get him for sure. So that's one to be looking out for. Unground, folks. Unground. 2 cost enchantment. We're in growth still. Anytime an idol takes damage, enchanted unit takes half of that damage rounded down. What that means for you is that anytime your opponent does damage to an idol, anytime you do damage to an idol, if it's 2 or more, they're taking damage. You cast a Decimation, it's dealing a point to this target. Or you crack him with a Siege Cracker. He hits for 1 and then does 5 points of damage. I'm guessing the disbursement of those packets means that you're doing 2 points of damage. It's just targeted removal in a way that I think growth needed. It's a way to kill a Harvester. It's a way to get to that Rot Eater before it wipes you out. I like it. I think it's gonna see play. I think a lot of people like it. You should probably play it if you're a growth player. At this point, that's my verdict. Next up, looking at Vengeful Vaettr. Costs 2 growth. He's another Vaettr, second Vaettr in the game. Pillage is the ability, again, in dealing damage to an idol. You're going to increase your growth by 1, and then Vengeful Vaettr is going to be dealt a point of damage. So without any buffs or anything, you're getting 2 hits out of this and potentially two additional growth resources that you wouldn't otherwise have. Acceleration. The problem is it could die, and it probably will die. It'll probably, worst of all, it will probably get languided and kill itself. Well, I guess it won't kill itself because the pillage won't trigger, so it won't deal the damage. But I could just see this guy ready to go and just getting soul siphoned, stolen, soul stole, or burned or sparked. I hope he does well, and I hope he makes it in, but I'm skeptical. And I like him though. I like him. Verdant Veil is an enchantment that costs 3 growth. It says enchanted creature's health is increased by 3 as long as health is equal to or higher than the base value. Enchanted creature cannot be targeted by spells or abilities. I like Verdant Veil. First of all, it does something right off the bat. You're getting 3 health out of it. That's not the greatest, but it has this secondary ability, which, if you've seen this scroll Untainted, very similar. The only difference is it can't be targeted by spells, which is the same, but this prevents other enchantments. So things like Binding Root, things like Brain Lice, things like Languid. So the stuff we see a lot of that we just don't like, it's not getting attached. Verdant Veil doesn't care about that stuff. So spells can't kill it, enchantments can't kill it, and then it's also buffed. The place that this is going to be most at home is in a deck that capitalizes on big, beefy dudes. Or gals. So Sisters of the Owl, Kinfolk Jarl. And really, we don't have to limit it to growth because it only costs 3 growth. So we could put this on a Harvester. We could make a big, beefy Harvester that has 7 health and can't be targeted, that just smashes in for 8. We could put this on a Rot Eater that will continually gain health as other things around it die. I think Verdant Veil is going to see play. I think if you're not preparing to put it in your deck, you need to prepare for how to stop it. And that's going to be by either mass damage or just straight beats and prioritizing damaging that idol or that creature to get it down below its original base health so that then you can target it with the stuff you want to. But Verdant Veil is good. That is the end of the sentence. Good night, everybody. Okay, moving on. Okay, so Wetland Ranger is neat. I think he's a cool dude, and I'll tell you what he does, because that's why you're here. Wetland Ranger has a cost of 4, which is a little steep, but it's got 1 attack, 1 countdown, 3 health. 1 countdown, though, is so important. And on top of that, it has this awesome ability. The ability is called Pillage Again. We're there. We know what Pillage is. But it says all your units get +1 attack during your next turn. So during the next turn, everything gets a buff of 1. Essentially, he's an ancestral totem on a stick. I dig him. I think there's going to be all kinds of decks with him that are just going to capitalize on super aggressive starts. I'm going to see him with that Fangbear. I'm going to see him with Crimson Bull decks. I'm going to see him with Rat Packs. I'm going to see him smash face with all kinds of consistency, and you are going to watch me do it too, because that's what it's all about, right? Just me doing that I just said. I've officially lost my mind. Thanks, everybody. Good night. Sorry. Okay, that's all I got. All right, let's take a look at Decay now, folks. We have Baleful Witch as our first Decay creature. It's going to cost you 3. It's got 2/2/2 attack, countdown, health, ranged attack, which is nice. I'm liking all this ranged attack. It's neat. And then it also has, when Baleful Witch comes into play, cursed creatures take 1 damage. So essentially what that means is that if a creature is cursed, let's say they have curse 1, which is the least they could have cursed, they take 1 damage, but actually because they're cursed, they take 2 damage. So Baleful Witch is doing, like, it's almost like a mini Quake, if that makes any sense. Like, anything that is cursed takes 2 points of damage. Now, you might ask yourself, well, what gives cursed at this point? And I'm here to provide you these things. Wicked Beam says when enchanted unit is attacked in melee combat, the attacker gets cursed 2. Iron Bile will come back to. Myers Curse, just the name, it actually doesn't curse anything. Cluster Hex, Bloodline Taint, and then Cursemonger. So, Cursemonger everybody plays. This is probably the easiest thing to use with Baleful Witch. The only problem is it only targets one creature, so it's kind of tricky. Bloodlight Taint will probably be amazing because against, say, Order players, which it seems like Orders might be becoming more prevalent just from the tools it got. I think it's just going to be a solid deck. Bloodlight Taint targeting humans pretty much makes their whole board have Curse 2, so then essentially you playing out Baleful Witch will deal 3 points of damage. Cluster Hex could be good. It doesn't seem to do a lot on its own, and with all the great stuff that Decay has and Decay is getting, it would be hard to find room to fit Cluster Hex. The one I think I'm most excited about is Iron Bile. The only issue is that it's symmetrical, so Baleful Witch would deal 1 to all your creatures, or essentially 2 to all your creatures and then 2 to all your opponent's creatures. But on an empty board, Iron Bile plus Baleful Witch could actually get you back in a game. So if you don't have anything and your opponent's sitting on a bunch of stuff, you get to put down this witch and deal essentially 2 points of damage to their all the creatures on their board all the units on their board because of Iron Bile. I'm sorry, all the creatures because Curse. So Iron Bile gives units Curse, but Baleful Witch only targets creatures with Curse. Now, that's not really a lot of options, so I think Baleful Witch is interesting. I think there's probably going to be more stuff that will make it more valuable. But right now we're talking about comboing it with Cursemonger, Bloodline Taint, and perhaps Iron Bile. It seems a little underwhelming. If you want to force the sort of curse theme, you could run Cluster Hex. But then what you're doing is you're doing this thing where you're just trying to make cool plays, and you're actually hurting the efficiency or the efficacy of your deck, or your deck's ability to win if you want to win. That's just assuming you want to win. I don't know. Maybe you don't want to win. Maybe that's the thing. I don't know. Anyway, I think it's neat, but I think there's probably other things out there that you're wanting to do. But keep your eye on Baleful Witch. Blade Husk is a big creature. It's going to cost you 2. It's undead. It has 4 attack, 3 countdown, 2 health, and then it has this Dominion ability. So Dominion effects are active while at least one opponent idol is down. So when one of your opponent's idols are destroyed, it has Relentless. Dominion as an effect seems scary to me because it seems like it gives a bonus if you're already ahead. That might not be the case. And what Dominion might actually serve as or function as is just a slow stopgap. So you're not going to get, it's not going to have Relentless from the get-go, from the beginning of the game. You're not putting down a 2-cost 4/3/2 just with Relentless turn 2. You're not just getting that ability right away. It's going to be later in the game when this comes out. So that makes sense. But it feels like if you're already ahead, it's like I'd almost want Dominion, and probably there will be something other than Dominion, and it'll be called like Rally or Comeback or something. And it's like if one of your idols is down, that would be an interesting ability. So like if you've lost an idol, this creature has +3 health or something, like, and the ability's called Rally or something. But there's already there's a card called Rallying, but there's an ability called Rally would be interesting. Yeah, look at that design. Sorry, I'll stop. So stat wise, it's not incredibly impressive. We've sort of seen better stats, but for the cost is nice. And what's nice is that it's an undead creature. So right now there is Restless Bones that impacts undead creatures, and then for types, if we look at the creatures with undead, we have Husk, Mire Shambler, and then Harvester. So we're starting to build towards this critical mass of undead creatures that would make Restless Bones good. So Blade Husk has a spot in that deck, but that deck's not really there yet when we're looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 creatures total. But we're getting there, and Blade Husk is a welcome addition to that. Bog Hound is a beast, so our Culling the Flock will impact Bog Hound. Another Dominion creature, another 2-cost creature. It's got 2 attack, 2 countdown, 3 health. The Dominion effect, though, is it's +2 attack when your opponent has at least 1 idle down or destroyed. So we're looking at a 2-2-3 early game, and then a 4-2-3 late game. That is also a beast that we can do beast shenanigans with, like sacrifice it to Culling the Flock and then buff everything for buff all my other beasts for attack and heal all my beasts. So that could be neat. I think he'll make it into that style of deck. It's another small creature, and I think a lot of people have been saying this about Blade Husk and Bog Hound, is they're just small creatures that Decay loves right now because it can essentially have more fodder for killing off to get activations off of Harvester and to get the Rot Eater bigger. They're both common, so you're going to see more of them in, say, limited formats or Judgment, which will be probably where they shine. Just standard beats, and that's totally fine. Cursed Presence, it's an enchantment. It costs 2. It says enchant opponent's unit. Whenever enchanted unit takes damage, opponent's units on that row get cursed 1. Enchanted. If enchanted unit is a structure, those units get cursed 2 instead. So let's say they're hiding behind a Waking Stone, then you put Cursed Presence on that Waking Stone. It's gonna essentially, they can't really hide behind that row anymore because they're gonna get cursed. You can't really capitalize on that too much with anything unless you have, say, a Baleful Witch or a Frostgale, something that you could like snipe those creatures with if they're hiding anyway. Cursed is just an interesting ability in that it doesn't do anything immediately. It's not until sort of later when damage starts coming out. Like Curse seems to work best with energy and all of its spot removal, like an Infernal Blast. So you could do you might have a deck that sort of runs Cursed Presence and then Cursed Presence and Baleful Witch, and then some like Infernal Blasts and it's like Sparks and Burns and Death Strikes and Energy Siphons, just like a mid-range energy decay deck. What's interesting to note though is it says whenever enchanted unit takes damage, so we're not talking about combat damage, we're talking any kind of damage. So you could put Cursed Presence down and then Kabonk, or like I was saying, like Infernal Blast or Spark, and then that would then curse everything and make all your other burn significantly better. So interesting. I don't know if it's worth a spot because, like I said, if I don't know that I would play this over, say, Cluster Hex. I would probably just play Cluster Hex, but then I don't even really want to play Cluster Hex. So I think that sort of sums it up. Just a random smattering of noises. All right, moving on, we've got Morbid Curiosity. It's an enchantment that costs 5. It says whenever enchanted creature kills another creature, you draw a scroll. So whenever your creature kills another creature, you draw a scroll. So whenever your Harvester smashes face and destroys 3 things, you get to draw 3 scrolls off of it. Is it going to get played? Probably not, because I don't know if it's worth the scroll to justify the potential attack. You could think of it maybe as like a fertile soil, in that if the opportunity to arises, but the opportunities seem so small, except for the fact that Harvester hits all the time, and Harvester always seems to crush face. So you could go turn 3 Harvester, and then when you know he's about to attack, slap a Morbid Curiosity on him, and then draw a couple scrolls. And then if Morbid Curiosity happens to die, then it's fine because you've already gotten value out of it. But if the Harvester sticks around and gets to kill like another thing, or if you put it on like a Rot Eater and it just sort of smashes consistently, I don't know if it makes it too competitive play because it feels slow, but that's not to say I don't think it's a powerful scroll. So worth considering. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. Next up, we've got Reaping Mask. Another enchantment, costs 7. It says whenever enchanted unit destroys an opponent's creature, draw a creature scroll, and then while you have more creatures than your opponent, enchanted units' attack and health are increased by 4. So this costs 7, but you're getting crazy big effects. Again, this would be crazy to put on a Harvester, essentially making it where you draw a creature. So if you're comparing Reaping Mask to, say, Morbid Curiosity, I think Reaping Mask gets the nod, except for it's just too... It's really pricey. One thing to note, though, and I'm sort of comparing these two, is Reaping Mask seems to run counter to the general strategy of Decay right now, which is get a bunch of stuff on the board, Necrogeddon, and then win. Reaping Mask... With Reaver Mask, it feels like you're going for quality over quantity. You're going for the big guy that can really win you the game by itself. The problem with stuff like that, with specifically those kinds of creatures, is scrolls like Damning Curse, scrolls like Violent Dispersal, just destroy target unit. You know, you put all this effort into this Reaping Mask. Hopefully you get at least one attack in and it replaces itself with the creature, but you just paid 7. And then even worse than, say, like Violent Dispersal or Damning Curse, like Pushback, like I was talking about earlier. Just the investment for an enchantment, if it made the creature untargetable, that would be crazy good. If Reaping Mask had the ability of we're gonna call it where is it? There we go. If Reaping Mask had the ability of Verdant Veil, where as long as you have more creatures than your opponent, then the enchanted creature cannot be targeted by spells or abilities, then that seems like it would be good, because it would give it this sweet ability. Essentially, you're giving it Morbid Curiosity with a specific of it only drawing you creature scrolls instead of drawing you any kind of scroll, but then having the protection to back it up of, say, Verdant Veil, as long as the caveat is while you have more creatures than your opponent. That seems like it would probably get me to play it, but as it stands, I just can't really justify spending 7 on something that can so easily get removed. So maybe you play the Veil and then you play the Reaping Mask. I don't know, but it could make I could see it making it into decks. I could also see people getting really mad after they play it, and then one thing you would never do with this is play it on a creature that is not already going to attack that turn. If the creature is not attacking that turn, and they find a way to deal with that creature, you get no value out of that scroll, and it just doesn't make sense to play it. That's just my thought. Okay, last new scroll is Stitcher. Stitcher's 4. He's another human. Humans are big. He has 2 attack, 2 countdown, and 2 health. And then when its countdown is 0, you sacrifice target creature to increase another target creature's attack and health by 2. Stitcher's countdown is then increased by 2. So then he goes back to having 2 countdown, which is fine. The interesting thing about Stitcher is that what he represents is that another sack outlet. Whether or not he's good, I don't know, but what he gives you, and I think a lot of Decay decks are actually moving away from just straight up Watcher wins, but I think what Stitcher gives you is just another way to kill your own creatures, to A, get a Watcher trigger, B, pump your Rot Eater, and then C, get your Harvester countdown reduced. So the role that Stitcher plays is that he is a sack outlet in a deck that obviously doesn't care at all about most of its creatures and wants them dead. And what you can then do is you can say, use Stitcher to beef up your Harvester or beef up your Rot Eater. He seems neat, and he seems like the style of play that Decay decks want to play on. I just, with his stats at 2/2/2, I don't know if he makes the cut. I think if it was a 0/0/3/4, and then he just had his ability and like he didn't attack, that might make the, well, no, I'm sorry, he'd have to be a 0/2/4 because I wouldn't want to use his ability every third turn. I would want to use it every second turn. So if he was a 0/2/4, I could see that. But as a 2/2/2 for 4, he seems super fragile. But he is, if you're really hard up for sack outlets, maybe he's your guy. So those are the new scrolls. I hope you enjoyed all that. I hope you learned something. Thanks for watching. Look for more gameplay videos in the future, but let me know if you like this, if you want to see more of this, and until next time.